Good evening, everyone. The time is now 5 p.m. and the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees are now convened in a workshop on Monday, October 16, 2023. A quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The first item on the agenda is public comments. No public comments.
No public comments.
Item 3, that is. There being no public comments, we'll move on to the board workshop. Item 3, board workshop. A, go-to update, exceptional learning experiences. Dr. Smith.
Board, it is an honor to be here today. As you know, in our workshops, we provide you an update on the goals that you adopt and our progress toward meeting those goals. This is a big one for us when we talk about exceptional learning experiences. We are talking about something that impacts every kid in our school district on an ongoing basis, on a day in, day out, every minute of the day basis. What we create for them in the classroom and beyond the classroom walls for learning is at the heart of what we do and should be the focus of what we do all the time. And so Gabby's here to walk us through a little bit of an update on that, and we'll turn it over to her.
Well, I am thrilled to be here tonight talking about the work that we're doing as it relates to Goal 2 exceptional learning experiences. We're going to take a deep dive tonight into some of our performance data that has really driven the decisions that we are making and how we're being guided by our work. Our purpose together today is really to be able to engage in conversation. Want to engage with you all in discussion about our progress towards our House Bill 3 goals and really some targeted areas of special programs and our emergent bilingual students, as these are some areas that we might need to focus on. Not might, we do need to focus on. You are very well aware that our goal is ensuring exceptional learning experiences for each and every student. But we've zeroed in this year on critical thinking, and we've talked a bit about that together in a couple of our, one of our board reports, as well as one of our workshops that we had. But we are working towards increasing critical thinking in our classrooms in Belton ISD, as well as perseverance. And we want to be able to give you an update in January on our progress related to that, or baseline, as well as some targets for us. But I want to just hear from you all before we even go deeper. Why critical thinking? What would that mean for your child to leave Belton ISD and for you to be able to say, my child is a critical thinker? What would that mean for you? Or why do you think that's important?
I think it's incredibly important if you're entering the workforce to be able to do something more than recite facts and to problem solve in today's economy. And just getting to visit some of the schools recently, we got to see that at South Belton and New Tech. It was pretty neat.
Tell us more. What did you see that told you that kids were engaged?
Yeah, the things that the students were working on were very complex. They weren't given all the answers. They were given high-level objectives to accomplish together in teams. I think they were doing a robot that had to go at so many feet with very few resources, rubber bands, and they were struggling. And so when they struggled, they had to work hard and very good.
I think that the standards that the state has placed before us are pretty rigorous themselves, and so in order to achieve them and for our students to be successful, they have to think at a higher critical thinking level so that they can master those things.
I think the knowledge that they're being asked to know today is not going to be the knowledge that they need to know tomorrow, right? And so if we can set the foundation of critical thinking, right, it's more about how do you approach that problem, how do I not give up, right, how do I switch paths, right, and you know, if we're looking to create the lifelong learner who can go out into the workforce and operate in an area that's gray, right, that's all based on the ability to sort of think critically, right, and adjust that path as you go forward.
Some of you have children entering the workforce right now. So we've had a couple of opportunities over the last year. One that really is profound in my mind. We took a group of aspiring leaders to visit Google. And it's not just at Google, but in our workforce right around Belton ISD. One of the number one things that they'll tell you that is a skill gap for their new employees is the ability to critical think. to think critically, to have a problem in front of them, and to be able to tackle that problem with multiple sources of information, with multiple perspectives. And so we really want to ensure that we're equipping our students to be able to do that. So we're going to take, Aaron mentioned some of the state standards today. We're going to take a dive into what are the goals that we've set for ourselves related to House Bill 3, and let you see how our students are performing as it relates to House Bill 3. But I'm going to ask you guys also to think critically alongside me as we are digging into data alongside us. I'm going to share some things and just ask you to, what do you see in it? What causes curiosity for you? And want to hear your perspective as it relates to the data, but also be able to share with you some action steps that we're taking. Okay? So today in our workshop, I don't know that we've really tangibly articulated to you all our House Bill 3 goals and all that comes into that. And so I want to walk through that, and then I'm going to give you data notebooks to have data in your hands and look at how we're performing with those. In House Bill 3, we have goals established in reading, math, and CCMR. In reading, we are measured up against third grade student outcomes as measured by STAR, with a goal of by June 2024, 50%, moving from 50% to 60% of our students being at meets or masters, measured by STAR. Now within reading, we also have progress measures along the way that we start measuring in kindergarten, that we want 75% of our kindergartners on track for reading as measured by an assessment called TextKia. And then we also look at our second graders' end of year performance on an assessment called Star Renaissance, and our target for that is that our second graders would be on track at 65% as measured by Star Renaissance.
Debbie, before you move on, can you just tell us a little bit about why those assessments? So TextKia and Star Renaissance, what do they do for us?
Yeah, so TextKia, and I'm going to explain what the assessment is and also tell you, we established these 5 years ago, and we've learned a lot more about that assessment in particular over the last 5 years. But TextKia is a foundational literacy assessment that measures phonetic skills in kindergarten students. So how are they acquiring very basic literacy skills? The TextKia assessment changes. So when I take a screener at the beginning of the school year, based on how many letters I knew correctly, the assessment changes mid-year. And so that's when I say we might reflect differently 5 years ago, we didn't understand that about the assessment when we established that target 5 years ago. It's a fine assessment. It's a great assessment that tells us about who our early readers are and early students are. The assessment structure creates some challenges for us within this specific KPM. Star Renaissance is considered a universal screener, and we use that across our system in reading. I'd call it a casting of the net. And so when you conduct universal screeners, everybody gets the same assessment, and the sole purpose of it is to tell you, here are some students you should really zero in on. They are likely going to have some academic challenges. And then the entire student body is broken into groups of students based on their performance with those assessments. And so we want to see, we give that screener beginning, middle, and end of year. And there are what we call student growth projections embedded within the system, much like when you go to the pediatrician and your child got a growth projection on how they would grow as a child. So we do have student growth projections embedded within the Star Renaissance assessment as well.
So do we know of a better assessment to use, or maybe not better, a more appropriate assessment to use than the TextKia?
So we are learning about some of those right now. There have been multiple assessments that have been rolled out over the last couple of years that are options for us to consider.
And again, I want to stress what Gabby said, an adaptive tool isn't a bad tool for us to use.
Right.
It just creates a little bit of funkiness for us when we're talking about these House Bill 3 goals. So that might be one that we do want to look at for the future in changing it.
Gabby, why did we choose these two?
So at the time, and I'll tell you, I remember vividly, at least when I was joining Belton ISD, we had to look at the assessment tools that we had available to us and maximize those resources in front of us. And so TextKia was one that we were using. We use, it's called Circle. There's another layer of TextKia called Circle Progress Monitoring that we use with pre-K students as well, and they're within the same platform. So there's some familiarity there. And it was one that the district had selected. It is it's a fine assessment. I'm not concerned about the quality assessment in TextKia. Like Matt just said, it's the way we report to report on our progress that's caused us some challenges. Now, Star Renaissance, Belton ISD had selected Star Renaissance as a tool to use for their universal screeners. It is adaptive in nature. It gives you good data around individual student growth projections, as well as the assessments are aligned to our state standards. So we do get some predictive data by using this instrument. Now, Star Renaissance has evolved since we were initially using it as well, and we are working alongside our principals and with Ben and Denise as well, making sure that we're using assured reports. And I'm actually going to show you a visual of a tool that we're starting to use now that gives us better information at the standard level with students.
And we're using the same one in all schools, right?
Yes, sir.
I do want to point out on this one, sometimes this gets confusing because this is called STAR, S-T-A-R, Renaissance. This is not the STAR assessment from TEA. These are two different assessments, even though this one says STAR. So.
Other interesting thing to know about that Star Renaissance is it's a nationally normed assessment. And so some of the tools that we use are just within the state of Texas, like the STAR test. The Star Renaissance is normed across the nation as a nationally normed reference test.
Does it align closely enough with, like, let's say a kid takes Star Renaissance and scores in the, I don't know, math, like the 85th percentile, is that a pretty good indication when that student takes the actual STAR exam where they're going to fall?
Yes, it should be.
Okay.
And I would say we have to make sure that we're using our resources and maximizing them. But yes, it is a predictive assessment, and there's a strong correlation between outcomes on the Star Renaissance and state assessments.
Just because, I think it's important to note, just for the sake of our community too, just because it's nationally normed does not mean it's Common Core state standards. This is aligned to the Texas standards, our TEKS, and this is a product that we use in Texas.
Other questions about those two assessments? Okay, in math, you'll see similar assessments used, in particular Star Renaissance. So our House Bill 3 target is measured by third grade math. We want to increase from 39% in 2023 to 60% of our students that meets their masters by June of 2024. Our key progress, our targets where we're looking at students and their progression towards this are in first grade, looking for students to be on track as measured by Star Renaissance at 76% of our students. And then we'll look at second grade as well with an on-track measure in Star Renaissance math of 76%. And so in just a bit, you're going to get to look at some visualizations of how we're doing as it relates to that. And finally, the other CCMR, the other House Bill 3 measure is CCMR. I apologize. And we have talked a bit more about this over time, but we want to increase from our 2022 graduates at 70% of them meeting our CCMR indicators to 100% by August of 2024. And just a reminder that those data points are measured by students who have already graduated from our system, which is one of the challenges that we faced with the accountability system this year. Within CCMR, there are additional progress measures that we are monitoring. There's a threshold that we want to meet for TSI in both reading and ELA, and want to see an increase from 57 to 64% on that.
What's TSI?
TSI, I think the easiest way for me to explain it is what used to be a college entrance exam. It's a readiness assessment to ask if students are prepared to enter college.
It stands for the Texas Success Initiative.
Yes.
And it is a state level measurement of if a student is ready for college or not based on reading, math.
They take that in their junior years and senior years, right?
Correct. And so you can meet it, you can meet that TSI threshold multiple ways, but the assessment usually starts your junior year.
And it's one that unique to others can be taken multiple times as well.
Because that one is the one that if you take it and you pass all of it, when you go, I only know about state schools, when you go to college, then you're starting out at the level you're supposed to be. Otherwise, you may have to take a lower level math or something like that.
Correct.
Okay.
You got it correct.
And that's exactly why I tried to back up that way, because it is one that will tell students where they have to enter with collegiate level courses as well.
Is this a required test from the state of Texas that we have to get in addition to all the other tests?
No, it's one of the indicators within CCMR that a student might pass that in order to earn the CCMR indicator for college readiness.
They may also earn it by earning certain scores if they've taken the SAT or the ACT. There are threshold levels where they can meet those college entrance baselines that we can report as well. So there are multiple ways, and that's why that goal is written 100%. There are multiple ways for our graduates to actually meet that standard. It's not just the TSI-A, the assessment. There's actually multiple ways for them to do that.
Melinda was just naming a couple of others as well. They can take AP exams, they can take dual credit courses. So you have to start multiple.
To meet the CCMR indicator?
Correct.
Yes. And I can bring back to you all in another one of our updates all of the indicators that go within that to make sure that we're all aware of what those are.
Is there any connection between TSI and the ACT or SAT?
There, I would say no. There's, they all three can be used as indicators of college readiness, but they're all very unique in the construct and the measurements of success. But not the same assessment at all. Okay, so we are going to look at several different data sources today to try to give you a picture into our progress. First of all, being those House Bill 3 indicators in reading, math, and CCMR. And then within there, I want to give you a look into how we are doing academically with our special programs, including special education and our emergent bilingual students. I am going to give you a data folder, and before you even dig in, I'm going to tell you there's a lot in here. I wanted you guys to have some artifacts of our work as well. And so if you, I'm going to try to orient you that we didn't put them out to get started at first because we didn't want to distract. So once everybody has them, I will just orient you to what's inside. So first of all, I just want to thank our team. The teaching and learning team is back here, and one of our priorities has been to take data and assessments that we are using and make sure that they are in a format that people can make sense of and manipulate and try to identify some work for us to do. So data visualizations has been a priority to us. We are not going to walk through every single page in this workbook. There's way too much. But I wanted you to have available things for curiosity that you have. So the way the folder is organized is first in our House Bill 3 data. So that'll be your first tab. The second one is our actual STAR performance this year. We will not dig as deep into it. It is a baseline for us. And so I want you to be able to reference it, but we're not going to dig deep into that today. And then the third tab is our special programs data, emergent bilingual data. And then I'm going to talk about some action that we're taking today. And I feel sometimes like we talk and wanted you guys to have some reference points to what we're talking about. And so there's just some artifacts included for you. So any questions so far before we dig in? You're going to get some partner work and you're going to think critically about the data that's in front of you. All right, so we're going to start with our House Bill 3 data. And if you just turn to that tab, I'm gonna only orient you to one set of visuals because the rest are the same. You will have a page for each of our House Bill 3 targets. So the first page you have shows our 3rd grade reading over time. You've got the percentage of students in each year from 2018 to 2023 that were at meets or above. You'll see a bar included for when we were most impacted by COVID, and then put a marker in there for when we had the STAR redesign. I want to remind you about the significant redesign to the assessment with different item types, integrated content areas across, a shift to technology, and just it was a completely different structure for students. So you have a visual there of just over time. And then at the bottom, there's a second visual that shows some longitudinal lines that breaks the data out into the different performance bands that students might fall in. Did not meet is in red, approaches is in green, meets is in blue, and masters in purple. So you will have a visual like this for each of our House Bill 3 goals, as well as the key progress measures for our Text-Kia and Star Renaissance data. That makes sense, what's in front of me. I want to ask questions before I say, hey, let's go dig in.
It's too early to tell if redesign is going to impact, right?
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. No, and that's, we've talked a little bit about this. That test, and the commissioner has been very clear that test was designed to test at a higher level of rigor for our students. And so when you can see 2022 versus 2023 on that first page that you see, those are two different assessments, yet our students performed equal to what we did in the past on a harder assessment. So we know that how STAR was redesigned. We know that it was all students on technology for the first time. We know that the level of rigor on those questions that they asked and the format of some of those questions was different. And so for me, I feel very good about we continue to perform at that same level on a test that's like saying you're comparing apples to oranges.
Okay, so here's what I'd love for you to do, just with a partner next to you, and you might have to scoot away from me.
Karen's like, okay.
I want to give you about 5 minutes, just within this House Bill 3 visualizations, to just mark it up. What do you see and notice in that data? What are some things that you're curious about? And so we'll do about 5 minutes side by side. Just that House Bill 3 one. Yes, so there's 5 different sets of visualizations in there. Yes, just the House Bill 3 one. And just want you guys to write all over it the things you're noticing and the things you're curious about. And we'll come back together and share what you saw and talk about some action we're taking related to that. Good? Okay.
Is it okay? You're not talking? Yes. Okay.
So page that you don't have to page that House Bill 3 is not. So that's why I'm always asking, is it just the first page or not? And so question clearly is that
These are not percentages. Yeah, I mean, these, the horizontal lines, those are not percentages.
They are.
They don't add up to 100. Oh. Oh, it does double count. Yeah. Okay. I got it.
So they're inclusive. Good.
Yeah. I've looked at that before and I couldn't remember. Of course, the red spiked and now it's headed back down. And I also have to assume, if you want to go back to 2018, that the rigor of the test has changed dramatically over that. What we're looking at is a 5-year period. Meats is going up.
Board book is right. You know, board book is right, but South Bend's book is right. I literally printed the wrong version.
I'm just looking over time.
It's on me.
Okay.
As long as board book is
You should see
okay.
my little emoji face. It's like sick.
No, as long as board book
Board
is
book is
okay.
good.
Because I was getting ready to read what the title was, and I'm like, that's not the title.
Believe me, I'm double checking everything now.
Yeah, I know. Had they not redesigned
Go get over here.
So this 55% goal, that doesn't correlate with mom.
No, HB3, no, that's the HB3 goal.
Right.
Our goal is 60%. HB3 says you need to get to that percentage. Our goal is 60%.
You need some data.
You know, it does appear that there's data that are first and second grade. You're on track, but that would make sense because the industry, you know, you can't, those kids that took it in third grade, well, it is what it is.
You're in third grade.
You got in first and second, right? Now, what you would hope to see is that if it's working in the third, rather be in the back, you should eventually see changes in the fifth grade testing.
We all see we're like approaching the goal.
Yeah.
Right, where it's flat. Where you at? So I'm just looking here, right, the second grade data, where the fact is right, what does that mean we're gonna have for
Of course, they're out there, they've met the goal of 62%.
Right, but our goal is higher.
No, the key project for their goal is 62%.
Well, that's at the state level, right, but our goal.
I don't know, that's ours, the state doesn't give you any.
All right, so now I'll go back to this then, right, so 55.
Okay, remember though, the state is down about your second grades, all they're looking at is third grade.
So you're saying this is state.
The red one?
Right,
And this is not.
I believe so. Okay. Because the state doesn't see this, they don't care.
Got it. It is. Okay, it does say KPN. All right, I'm with you.
Yeah.
The red one is
Of course, like everybody else, it's our math.
Yes.
Because I think you did, you'll catch them up in reading, ELA, history, and science quicker than you can catch them up in math. Oh no, we're definitely
There's
doing
just
that.
so many foundational.
That they missed right here.
Right.
It's the green plus the red.
I mean, you missed a year of instruction.
Crazy.
Well, a whole spring semester of instruction, math. And then, what percentage of kids we had didn't through in the second year, I hope, where they were, you know, and even if they weren't, it wasn't a good year.
We got a big gap.
So see, look here in second grade, Renaissance, okay, KPM, first grade, almost there, 73%. We're already in second grade. So that would have, you would assume that our third grade of next year will be on track. You can't go back in time.
These third grade kids,
This first grade, 50%
that worries about what's coming high.
Fifth grade. Yeah, what are we doing to help them between third and fifth? Yeah.
So it looks like
Okay, I'm gonna try a strategy real quick. I cannot stand disrupting really good conversation in the classroom, and this is exciting to me that y'all are moving in. So tell me, do you need a little bit more time or a lot of time? And I call a lot of time 3 minutes, obviously.
Well, we only did 1 page.
We'll say
Teacher,
a
we
little
need more
more time, yeah.
Go for it.
We're at 5:30, so a little bit more time.
Okay, so let's take a couple more minutes on our house building.
It was CCFR.
For CCMR.
Yeah, that's what our letter grade.
I'm sorry, I don't.
that's our projection, that's the same visualization we looked at in our workshop in 2023.
So the 2023 forecast is released.
This is not cohort.
So even with the climb, we expect
Same with the next one, second
Well,
grade.
then when you get back here,
That's not them in third.
and you look from here to
Second
here,
graders.
that's massive. That's massive.
41 to 60 to 70%.
Yeah. Which kind of proves the point we need to make.
Okay, I'm gonna ask y'all to come back together. It's in a little bit more time. So will you just share, what are the things that you are seeing so far that you're noticing and anything that you're curious about when looking at this household free data?
I think when you look at the reading, pre and post COVID, there's a dip, but there's a bounce back. But in the math, there's a dip. It looks like we have a little bit more weight to go in math compared to reading. But then when you turn the page and you see the first grade in 2022 and 23, it looks like they are moving upwards when they take their first STAR test in third grade. So looks like some good progress being made.
So, question, something that Chris and I noticed. So, if you go and look at first and second grade data on the math renaissance, or basically the first and second grade data across the board, they're making pretty good strides. So we would assume that next year, our third grade data should show that because those second graders will be in third. I guess the question is, I guess these would be 2023, so third graders now that we see on here, what do we have to do to get them up by fifth grade and then seventh? I mean, because they're the ones, if you look at the COVID year, they're the ones that really got impacted. These first graders and even some of the second graders, I know there's been some social issues because they weren't in classrooms and we've had discipline, and I know that. They didn't miss as much as the third graders did, though. The third graders missed actually a lot of academic time in the classroom. So that's a year that we just,
So when we start talking about these categories of our response, I think I can directly answer some of the things that we're doing right now to respond and help with that in our responses. So I think I'll be able to respond to that.
No, that's fine.
I mean, I think it's important to note that these are interim goals, right? So when we see that, the STAR reading will increase from 50% to 60%, like 60% isn't really the goal.
Correct.
Right? Like this is our interim milestone, right? We want to continue to press forward, but when you got a cliff or a valley this far that you got to get across, right? You got to do it in pieces.
And that really is the value of the progress measures, for us to be looking at not just our third grade students, but to be able to look at these milestones along the way to ensure that they're ready. Anything you're curious about?
Is there any kind of focus on our students that are in the mastering category because they have dipped and in some cases continue to dip? So, I know we really want people to meet, but there's another group, some of our top tier academic students they're not achieving at the level they used to.
And when we're not monitoring that closely, it's when we have the dips and we have that loss in growth points for those students as well. Well, let's talk a little bit about some things that we're doing, and I'm gonna, we'll kind of toggle back and forth between some categories here. Based on this House Bill 3 data, I want to explain some action that we're taking and let you have a look at some artifacts to support that. In general, our responses, I would categorize them in the areas of curriculum and instruction responses, multi-tiered supports, assessment support, and professional learning. All of our action is in service, or the vessel to our action is our instructional framework that has been developed over the last 3 years as well, in service to our students and journey of a graduate. So what you just looked at was the broad. It was all of our students included in this data, not broken down into our student groups at all. So I'm going to talk about some general responses for you. First of all, within curriculum and instruction. And I think this is a direct response to Mr. Norwood's question. What are we doing about those students that have had some significant gaps in learning, and we're accelerating those? So yes, students coming into third grade have had those challenges across our system. We missed some time with some standards. And so what we've done this year is begin the work of looking historically by standard at how our students have done. And I want to make sure that when I say standard, I'm not using edu speak and not making sure we're all on the same page. Our standards are established by the state of Texas for each grade level and content area that articulates these are the things that students should learn in this grade level. So when you talk about students had big misses in content, we've got to be thinking about how we're recovering that content. And so what we are working on is identifying what the most high priority learning standards are. And we're doing that by looking at historical data back 4 years. So how did if we look at 4th grade, backwards 4 years, what was our performance like year over year in each of these standards to identify where are some places that we really need to invest in, you might call it recovery, or just the scope of standards is so wide, we've got a narrow focus for our teachers as well.
So that data also helps us see what are the standards that are difficult to teach and difficult to learn. Like we have data that tells us that, and so that those get elevated up then.
An additional layer to that is that we're looking at those that are in alignment with critical thinking. So we're taking our priorities, which are the graduate competencies, and analyzing standards to identify the TEKs that need to be elevated to increase rigor in thinking. So go for it.
So how are we doing that, right? And I actually went to 2 presentations at the conference, and listened to 2 districts that were doing this. Like, how do we do that here? Like, identify where we may have missed the mark in teaching a certain thing in the classroom, right? And I'm not accusing anybody of anything, right? But how do we do that?
So I'm going to flip us visually to the back of your artifacts tab, and if you'll just go, it's actually the second to last page in that section. Mr. Clark can answer that pretty clearly.
You need your readers though.
Yes, you do. And I do want you to dig in. I don't want you guys to feel like you're having to dig into standards, but I wanted you to see how we're doing it. Yes. So that's how we're doing it. What this is a spreadsheet that our team has taken all of the standards by grade level and subject area and pulled the data back 4 years. There, you will not be able to read it. It was really just to create some visual stimulus. But the green are readiness standards that tell us that students must have be ready with these standards in order to be ready for the next grade level. Okay. And then the ones in white are supporting standards. So that's how we're doing it. And then once we identify those standards, we are highlighting them within our curriculum documents for teachers.
Are there any official tools, software packages, whatever that we're using to do it, or are we doing this sort of homegrown?
We are using some official tools,
Okay.
yes.
Right.
So we invest in what's called Eduphoria, and it allows us to use external assessments as well as internal assessments to build these data tools.
And
Now,
Gabby,
this is something.
correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Eduphoria also has tools, to Chris's point, that basically can take and plot in a heat map how we did on a specific standard.
Yes.
Am I correct in that?
You are correct in that. And then we learned a little bit about the STAR Renaissance assessment. I mentioned earlier that we're investing in learning on the tools that we have. The next page is the same kind of look within the STAR Renaissance platform that we have, that any teacher will get a roster of their students, and by standards, we'll be able to get that visual heat map at the student level as well. So what we've built is at the district level related to standards, and then each teacher can grab those for their students as well.
So there are a couple different tools that we use for that. I do think one of the things we have to work on is how we use those with teachers, and we're ultra clear about what tool we use when and why, because I think that has been a problem for us in the past.
I think one of the presentations I went to, they used the same tool for it, and the other used something different. I'll have to get back to my notes, but.
I think you told me about the other one,
Yeah.
I think I know which one it was. I also want to make sure I clearly note that this also helps us with Janet's question too, and so you want to make sure you talk about that?
Yes, so what's coming to my mind when I'm thinking about your question is the multi-tiers of support that we're providing. And so as you can see with this tool at the student level, if I have a student that is green all across standards, then I need to be able to respond differently to them in instruction. And I don't want to jump too much back and forth, but one of our priorities that we're working through with principals, with instructional coaches, is really articulating a process for what we mean by intentional planning in our district. It's one of the core components of our instructional framework that we're planning intentionally. So what does that mean? We're not just labeling something, but we want to say, here's the process to do that. And so the first page in your artifacts tab is actually hot off the press. Our instructional coaches, our coordinators and principals have been working to articulate this. 4 broad categories of what do we want students to know, and that's where we start at the standards level. And this tool has guiding questions for teachers within it. How am I going to know what students already know? So to Janet's question, we're pointing them in direction to tools that'll tell them what do your students already know, and assessments that when you're designing instruction, you are designing for the students that are in front of you rather than everybody getting the exact same approach. We also are asking, how will we know if students learned it? Because then I need to respond differently based on how students respond to the learning experience that they have. If a student struggled, then I need to be responding differently than if a student mastered that instruction and they need to be accelerating differently. And so this tool that's right here is something that we have been building this year so that we have some assured on processes in our system for how we plan for students based on our standards and based on their responses to the learning experience.
And that's students performing at every level. And so being able to know and assess Rucker Preston and Matt Smith are in a classroom and Rucker has mastered this material, Rucker still deserves the experience to grow in that classroom. And we're trying to make it explicit to the teachers on how to help Rucker grow while Matt might need remediation on that same concept. And so this is about aligning resources and supports for teachers so that they can appropriately address those 2 students in the classroom.
I like to think of this through an analogy of shoes. We all wear shoes. That's a standard, right? I might struggle to put mine on sometimes, but we all wear a standard of shoes. Our size is different, our style is different, and then the purpose for the shoes that we're wearing is different. If I have tennis shoes on, or if I need to go for a run, I'm going to be much more effective by putting tennis shoes on versus putting my high heels on. So if you think of the shoe as a standard and then all of the different sizes, styles, and purpose of shoes, that helps you understand the personalization that we want to see in our classrooms as well.
So I know, and I'd asked this to the principal, but I know in part of what you're doing this year with your team is that y'all are, updating, redesigning the curriculum, documents, the tools, and all of that.
Yes.
It's kind of an hodgepodge and you're streamlining, which I agree with. I guess one of my questions is, when we have that done and we're happy with it, you're happy with it, you say, hey, this is effective, this is for math, this is for, the different things that you're doing. Change is hard on people. And if you have teachers that, I guess my question is, how are we going to make sure that we spend the time to develop these documents and these curriculums, got them where you want them, how are we going to make sure that the teachers are actually utilizing what they're being given instead of reverting back to, well, but this is what I've always used and I really like it?
Yeah. So there's this element of human behavior and mindset that has to shift, right? And to some degree, people will always have a desire to go to where they feel comfortable and what there's a feeling that worked for me before. My best response to that is having agreed upon processes within the system. So because I have an articulated process for what we mean by intentional planning, then when we come together in collaborating with teachers, whether it be at the campus level in grade level planning, or in our instructional design days where we bring second grade teachers or Algebra 1 teachers together at the district level, that we are using these agreed upon processes and tools to inform those conversations. And that they're all grounded in student performance data as well. I am much more likely to keep pulling the thing that I've always done out unless I see some data that tells me, hey, that didn't work. But here's tools to support you in doing something different as well.
And I would add something to that as well. We're aligning the work that we're doing with principal professional learning to this work so that we're building their capacity and knowledge to utilize these tools so that they can support the use of these tools on their campus every day. So aligning professional learning with principals and then also our instructional coaches and then supporting our teachers. So I think it takes all of that to support and increase the use, plus having high quality resources and materials will cut that desire to use it.
I am very proud of that alignment. We have been very intentional in on the teaching and learning team, as you were saying, okay, what is our desired outcomes for our instructional coaches, for our teachers, and then Ben, Denise, and I work very closely on principal outcomes as well. And so we're trying to pull the thread through so that everybody has the appropriate knowledge and skill set with the tools that are being developed for the role that they're in.
It's been a little bit since I mentioned this to you all, but when we added the principal supervisor positions a couple of years ago, we talked very specifically about how they work in tandem with the teaching and learning department. So Gabby works with the teaching and learning department. Their job is to produce the tools, resources, curriculum, professional learning to be used through the system. Ben and Denise, as the principal supervisors, work with principals to ensure those tools, resources, and professional learning are used well through the system. They're the ones that help manage the change. Gabby and her team help provide the product and support to realize something new in the classroom.
The other thing I would say in response to that question is, and I can see vividly clear now, our teachers were a part of the redesign process of curriculum documents this summer to get us started. We won't dig into it right now, but there are artifacts in your folder for you, so you can actually see what they look like. And making them simple and accessible. What I can see now in visiting classrooms across the district is a much more alignment with our timelines, our recommended timelines. I can see the same resources being used in classrooms. And the feedback, we just had a listening session recently, and based on the feedback you're getting, whether it's challenges or successes, you can see that people are diving into using the resources, and the quality of feedback is something tangible that we go back and are able to examine and say, what action do we need to take right now? One of the biggest indicators of success to me is images like what you see up there. This is from one of our planning sessions with teachers, and just asked them to dive into documents, and then they created a reflection tool afterwards. And as you can see, their breaking news was that happy teachers have the tools that they need to plan and get home to their families on time, as well as tools to support students and success. When people are using them, then we can make much more effective improvements to our documents as well.
And real quickly, there's one group I left out. Gabby and Ben and Denise also partner with Cassandra, and Cassandra and team work with our assistant principals. So working to align not only in their monthly meeting building operational capacity as APs, but they're also getting the instructional leadership piece because Cassandra's partnering with them. So we're really trying to align instructional coach, professional learning, principal, IC, and AP.
We've got about 10 minutes left, so we're going to need to.
I want to, so if you will turn to your tab labeled special programs, I think this is very important, and the conversation will be very similar around action. And I'm just going to call out some things for you. The data that you see on this page, there are 4 different visualizations They are the overall performance for each of the core content areas. Reading is first, and it's combined grades 3 through 8, plus our EOCs. You'll see the same thing for math in blue, then also for science, and then at the bottom, on the far right, you'll see social studies. So I'm just going to call out trends for us for sake of time. We can see within this data that we have some challenges with our student performance in our emergent bilingual students and with our special programs for student meeting eligibility for special education. And so across different content areas, these are places that we have got to zero in and put the right supports in place for both our students and teachers. And so I want to be able to talk to you all a little bit about that. The next page in here shows you what our eligibility counts are. We do see an increase in students who are meeting eligibility for special education. And the pie graph at the bottom shows you the primary eligibility codes that we have. The biggest one is green, which is students who are meeting eligibility with a learning disability. And so I want to respond to that because there is such tight alignment to what we need to do in our core instruction as well. We cannot have a gap in our expectations for teachers and the supports that we're providing teachers between our core instruction and our special education classrooms. We have to have the high expectation for rigorous instruction regardless of a student's eligibility. And so what I want to call out to you is that not only are we improving curriculum resources at the tier 1 levels, we are also providing that same level of support and data for our special education teachers. So we have added a curriculum coordinator to support resource and inclusion. We are providing the learning standards data for our special education teachers as well as professional learning and how to use those. And for the first time ever, we have resources specifically invested in aligned to content and eligibility for students. For example, if a student meets eligibility for special education with a learning disability in reading, we have targeted resources to support students with a comprehension need if that's what their eligibility was. We just had some broad scope before. We also historically have not included our special education teachers in our content design days, where teachers are coming together for collaboration, and that is a part of their work. They are included in the curriculum design. They are included in our professional learning days, where we are designing learning experiences. And again, bringing that assessment level data to them that we looked at, that we showed you those visualizations that you couldn't read the data. It was just to give you an idea. That's going to our special education teachers as well. And this is related to Ms. Lee's question earlier. I would call it multi-tiered systems of support. Sarah is working very closely with Holly, who supports interventionists and their teams, and is working very closely with Tracy, who is over curriculum and instructional design. They are talking about the embedded supports together to make sure that we've got tight alignment that builds on each other and is not operating in silos. It's one of their key priorities, and they are constantly in communication around that. We're bringing teachers together differently and support staff together differently to narrow some gaps that we have historically. Any questions about special programs? I hate that, but moving quickly like that. Okay, the same thing for our emergent bilingual students. We serve, that's the next tab, we serve 29 languages in Belton ISD. And there's a visualization. The purple is Spanish. That's our primary second language that students are speaking in our system. The graph that you see at the bottom is our program eligibility. So students who are acquiring the English language or are multilingual, these you can see are climb over time. The data is reflected from 2021 to the 23-24 school year. Up top in purple is students who meet criteria as a student with English as their second language. The gold is students who are in one of our dual language programs, one way, and then the blue is our two-way dual language program. And so wanted you to be aware of the students that we're serving related to those language needs. Some investment that we have made over the last year is really in our dual language program. We had a needs assessment conducted to look at how our students are progressing and what our program supports are. As a result of that needs assessment, we have made an adjustment to our language acquisition plan. And what that means is the way we're prioritizing time in our dual language classrooms to increase acquisition of the English language for our Spanish dominant or native Spanish speakers, while simultaneously increasing the Spanish acquisition for our native English speakers who are in our dual language programs. So we have a new language acquisition plan as well as intense professional learning support for our dual language teachers. That is a big gap that we've had over time, and we've heard about the lack of support for our dual language teachers. We have a consultant who has a focus group and they conducted the needs assessment, but is having routine professional learning with teachers. That means
Must be we're done.
Got it. As well as coaching for our dual language teachers and professional learning for our principal leaders. And that's our biggest investment. You can see the climb in ESL. We are also developing a program guide for students who are who receive services in ESL that clearly articulates the ways that we support them regardless of the campus that they're on. So,
Just clarification, this one way, we're calling one way dual language, that used to be called bilingual, correct?
bilingual is one structure for bilingual services. Over time, we've had early exit bilingual, we've had late exit bilingual, we've had transitional bilingual, and we now are dual language with one-way and two-way embedded.
My boys were in it, but they didn't have the support for that program back then. And teachers were kind of just trying to do it on their own, and just the more resources you can give them to be successful is so good. Because what we've seen already over at Tarver Elementary was phenomenal.
Well, we definitely have improvements to make in support, but I am proud of the investment that we made. And again, that we're hearing feedback now that's really meaningful about what's working and what some areas that we need to improve. Okay.
So we're at a time where we should probably wrap up, and I think we got our cue. But I think we might figure out how to bring more back. I think we only scratched the surface of this conversation tonight. And so we will talk to you about next steps and bring this back another time where we can talk, continue the conversation in more depth. Again, taking us back to goal in this. When we talk about goal 2 and our progress in exceptional learning for each and every student, we have to look back at our performance and our data and look forward on our improvement planning and efforts so that we continue to improve. Exceptional is a high bar, and we want it high because we believe when they walk in the doors every day, they should have something exceptional because they deserve it. And so we're striving for that, and we'll come back to you with more information in the future.
Thank you for the conversation. It's very hard to interrupt when there's that noise around conversation.
That concludes our workshop this evening. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 6 p.m.